The city burned like a dying star. Flames climbed into the black sky, turning smoke into a dark cloud that hid the moon. Streets once filled with children's laughter now echoed with the sound of marching boots and the cries of the defeated. She stood in chains, her wrists bound by cold metal. Her name, once spoken with love in her family's home, was forgotten here. To the soldiers who dragged her through the broken streets, she was nothing. To them, she was a prize, a token of victory, a spoil of war. Her clothes were torn, dust, and ash covering her skin. The light in her eyes had not died, but it was dim like a candle in a storm. Around her, other captives stumbled, pushed forward by armed men who laughed as if war were a game. The enemy banners waved high. Red and black colors stretched above ruined towers, symbols of conquest. Every building, every face she saw reminded her of loss. Once this place had been her world. Now it was rubble, a grave for everything she had loved. The soldiers whispered as they looked at her. "She will bring a high price," one said. "Beautiful, even in chains," another replied. "But she is dangerous. Her people were fighters." She kept her head high, though inside she felt the weight of despair. She told herself she would not cry. She would not give them the victory of seeing her broken. At the end of the road, they stopped before a figure in dark armor. He was different from the others. He did not laugh. He did not sneer. His helmet hid his face, but his silence carried more power than the shouts of the soldiers. "This one," a guard said, shoving her forward, "is for you, Commander. The spoils of war belong to those who lead." The commander looked at her for a long time. His eyes, hidden behind the mask, gave no sign of mercy or cruelty. He only nodded once, a simple gesture that sealed her fate. She was pulled away from the line of captives and placed at his side. The other prisoners stared with pity, some with fear. No one spoke. They all knew what it meant to be claimed. The night deepened. The captives were marched toward the warship waiting beyond the walls. Massive engines rumbled, casting shadows across the broken stones. She stumbled once, her legs weak, and a soldier shoved her to the ground. Dust filled her mouth. Before she could rise, the commander raised his hand. "Enough." His voice was low, calm, but it silenced the others. He offered her no hand to rise, no comfort, but the order was enough. The soldier stepped back. She pushed herself to her feet, her pride stronger than her body. She followed, silent, but inside her thoughts screamed, "Why me? Why was I given to him?" On the warship, the air was colder, sharp with the smell of metal and fuel. Lights glowed from the walls, guiding the soldiers and their prisoners into the belly of the beast. The ship's doors closed with a heavy clang, shutting out the burning city, shutting her away from everything she had known. The commander walked, ahead, silent, always silent. She studied him from behind. His shoulders were broad, his steps heavy, yet not careless. He carried authority like a shield. The crew bowed slightly as he passed, but their eyes lingered on her with hunger or scorn. "She is his," someone muttered. "Then she will not live long," another replied. Her heart pounded. What did they mean? Was she safe in his hands or closer to death? Hours passed like shadows. She was placed in a small chamber, not a prison cell, but not free either. A bed, a single light, and a locked door. She sat on the edge of the bed, her chains heavy on her wrists. She stared at the door, waiting. Would he come? Would he demand his right as her captor? But the door stayed closed. Only silence answered. Her mind raced. She remembered her family, her city, her people, all gone. She remembered the words of the soldiers. Spoils of war. Was that all she was now? A possession? A trophy to be displayed, then discarded? Yet when she closed her eyes, she saw his still figure, the commander who had claimed her. He had not mocked her. He had not touched her. He had stopped the soldier from beating her. Was that mercy? Or was it something worse? Sleep did not come. Fear sat with her in the dark. The ship moved through the endless night of space, carrying her away from home, away from freedom, and in her heart a question grew like a shadow. Was this man her protector or her executioner? The warship drifted through the stars, silent as a predator waiting for its prey. Inside its cold walls, she sat alone, her wrists still bound, her mind filled with questions that gave her no rest. The door finally opened. Light spilled across the room and the commander entered. He removed his helmet. His face was not what she expected. Not cruel, not gentle either. Strong lines carved his features, a man shaped by war. His eyes were steady like stone, but behind them lived something deeper, something he hid carefully. She did not speak. Neither did he. He placed a tray on the table, food and water, then turned to leave. Why? She asked at last, her voice sharp though her throat was dry. Why do you feed me? Am I not your prisoner? He paused. Prisoner, yes, but not starved. She wanted to spit the food on the floor. She wanted to curse him, to fight. Yet her body trembled with weakness. Hunger gnawed at her strength. Slowly, carefully she ate. He said nothing, only watched. When she finished, he took the tray and left without another word. Days passed in silence. He came. He left. Food, water, nothing more. The soldiers outside whispered about her. Some laughed, saying she would not last long. Others envied the commander, though they feared him too much to act. She noticed things. He never locked her chains tighter. He never raised his hand against her. His voice was always calm, though his eyes carried storms. One night, when the engines roared louder, she crept to the door and pressed her ear against it. She heard him speaking softly, but not to her. His words were broken, almost like a confession. I cannot keep her here. But if I send her away, they will know. Orders must be followed, yet orders burn me alive. Her breath caught. He was struggling, torn between command and conscience. She backed away before he could sense her listening. The next day, when he entered, she dared to ask, You are not like the others. Why? He looked at her for a long time before answering. War changes men. Some lose their soul. Others pretend they still have one. You pretend, she said quietly. He gave no reply. She began to watch him more closely. When he walked the ship, he kept distance from the crew, speaking only when needed. They obeyed him out of fear, not respect. He ate alone, spoke little, and carried himself like a man with invisible chains heavier than her own. To the others he was power. To her he was a mystery. One evening when he brought food, she did not touch it. You will eat, he said. No, she whispered. Not until you tell me what you plan to do with me. For the first time his voice sharpened. You will eat. She lifted her chin. Then kill me. If I am only your spoil of war, end it now. Silence filled the room. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned, not with anger, but with something else. Pain. At last, he said, Not all chains are of iron. Some chains are duty, and mine are stronger than yours. He turned and left, leaving the tray behind. She sat in the silence, her mind racing. Duty. What duty? Why keep her alive if he did not care? Later that night, she was awakened by voices outside her door. She is too dangerous, Commander, a soldier argued. A woman from the enemy line? Kill her or she will kill us. No, the commander's voice was sharp, final. She stays alive. You risk too much. The Emperor will not approve. The Emperor is far away, the commander growled, and I am here. The soldier muttered curses but obeyed. Her heart pounded. The commander had defended her again. But why? The warship glided into orbit around a barren moon. Supplies were needed and the crew prepared to land. She was allowed to walk under heavy guard. The cold wind stung her face as she stepped on the rocky ground. Her eyes scanned the horizon. Freedom stretched before her, empty but tempting. She saw her chance when the guards grew careless. She ran. Shouts filled the air. Blaster fire lit the night. She stumbled across rocks, chains slowing her down. The soldiers closed in, weapons raised. One aimed directly at her heart. "Stop!" The commander's voice thundered across the field. He stepped between her and the soldier. "She is mine," he said, his tone cold enough to freeze stone. The soldier hesitated, but fear of disobeying won. He lowered his weapon. The commander turned to her. His eyes locked with hers, sharp and unyielding. "Do not run again." She trembled, not from fear but from confusion. Why protect her? Why risk himself? As they marched back to the ship, his words echoed in her mind. Not all chains are of iron. Back in her chamber, she sat in silence. The commander had saved her life, but also reminded her of her cage. He was both her jailer and her shield. Who was this man? A monster wrapped in mercy? Or a broken soul pretending to be strong? And more important, how long before his own chains dragged them both into ruin? The days after the failed escape were heavy with silence. The commander had spoken only once. "Do not run again." Since then, he had kept his distance. In her small chamber, she sat alone. The food still came, the water still came. But she did not eat. Her pride told her not to. If she must remain a prisoner, she would fight with the only weapon she had left, her refusal. The first day without food was bearable. The second day was harder. By the third, her body shook with weakness, but her spirit still resisted. She whispered to herself, "I will not give him my obedience, I will not." When he entered the chamber on the fourth day, she expected anger. Instead, he set the tray down and looked at her calmly. "You will die if you continue this." "Better death than chains," she answered. For a moment, the mask of stone on his face cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes flashed with something close to grief. But the expression vanished quickly. He left without another word. The silent war between them had begun. Every day, he brought food. Every day, she ignored it. She would not bend. Yet every night when hunger gnawed at her like fire, she found the tray replaced with a fresh one. He never stopped trying. On the fifth night, she found herself staring at the bread. Her hand trembled. She was close to breaking. She thought of her family, of the people who had died. If she lived, maybe she could honor them. If she died, then she was only another victory for her captors. Anger flared. She shoved the tray aside, forcing herself to remain strong. But when she glanced at the door, she saw him watching through the narrow gap, his face half hidden by shadows. He said nothing, only turned and walked away. Her chest tightened with confusion. If he wanted her alive, why not force her to eat? Why fight this quiet battle of patience instead of power? The ship carried them deeper into unknown space. Outside, the window, endless stars drifted like silent witnesses to her struggle. One night, unable to sleep, she rose and crept to the small window in her chamber. She saw him standing alone on the deck below, gazing at the stars. His posture was rigid, but his head bowed as if weighed down by invisible chains. In that moment, he did not look like a conqueror. He looked like a man carrying sorrow too heavy to speak aloud. She pressed her forehead against the glass, whispering, "What are you hiding, stranger?" The next morning she broke. Her hands shook as she lifted the bread from the tray. She ate slowly, her pride warring with her hunger. She hated that she needed it. She hated even more that he had won. When he entered later, his eyes fell on the empty tray. No smile, no triumph crossed his face, only the smallest nod, as if he had expected this all along. "You chose life," he said quietly. "I chose not to give you victory," she snapped. He tilted his head. "Sometimes living is the greatest defiance." His words struck her like a blade, sharp and unexpected. She wanted to argue, but the strength in her voice faltered. He left her again in silence, but his words echoed inside her long after he was gone. Over the next days, something shifted. She still despised her captivity, but the silence between them carried a strange tension, like two soldiers on opposite sides of a battlefield, waiting for the other to make a move. When he came, she studied him carefully. His face gave little away, yet sometimes his eyes betrayed him. A shadow of regret, a flicker of sorrow. Finally, she asked, "Do you enjoy this war of silence?" "No," he said, "but it is better than real war." "What do you mean?" He did not answer. He simply turned his gaze toward the stars outside, as if the endless night might explain what his mouth could not. One evening, as the engines hummed through the ship, she heard raised voices from the corridor. "She should be sent to the Emperor," a soldier argued. "Why keep her here? She is nothing but trouble." The commander's reply was firm. "I will decide." "She weakens you," the soldier spat. "We see it. You are not the man you were." Silence followed. Then came the commander's voice, low and dangerous. "Leave. Before you speak words you cannot take back." The argument ended. The footsteps retreated. She sat in her chamber, her heart pounding. The crew had noticed. They saw something in him, something even he tried to hide. Why risk his command for her? That night when he brought food, she whispered, "They hate me. They hate you for keeping me. Why do you endure it?" His eyes met hers, cold but steady. "Because not all battles are fought with swords. Some are fought in silence inside the soul, and those battles are the hardest to win." Her breath caught. She stared at him, unsure if he spoke of her or of himself. Later, when he left, she sat on her bed, her chains heavy, but her thoughts heavier. The silent war was no longer only hers. He was fighting too. But what if his battle ended with her death? Or worse, with her belonging to him forever? She closed her eyes, torn between hatred and curiosity, fear and a strange pull she could not explain. And in the silence of the warship, she realized, perhaps the greatest war was not between nations, but between two hearts trapped on opposite sides of the same chain. The warship descended toward a barren moon, its engines roaring like a beast preparing to land. From the small window of her chamber, she saw the surface below. Endless gray rocks, sharp cliffs, and shadows that stretched like claws across the land. It was a dead place. No trees, no rivers, no life. Yet to her, it looked like hope. The commander's voice echoed through the halls as orders were given. Supplies were needed. The crew prepared to step outside. For the first time since her capture, she was allowed to leave her chamber. Her wrists were still chained and soldiers marched at her side, but her feet touched open ground again. The cold air stung her skin. She drew a deep breath, tasting freedom, even if it was bitter and dry. The soldiers laughed as they unloaded crates from the ship. They paid little attention to her. She walked slowly, her eyes darting to the horizon. The cliffs were far, but if she could reach them, maybe she could disappear into the shadows. Her heart pounded. Her chance was here. When the guards turned their backs, she ran. The chains on her wrists rattled, slowing her steps, but she pushed forward with every ounce of strength left in her body. The rocky ground cut her feet. The wind whipped against her face. She heard shouts behind her, angry voices, boots pounding the earth. "Stop her!" Blaster fire lit the night, red streaks flashing past her. She ducked, stumbled, but kept running. Her lungs burned, her body screamed for rest, but she would not stop. Not now. Not when the cliffs were so close. Then a shot grazed her shoulder. Pain exploded, hot and sharp. She fell hard onto the rocks. A soldier aimed again, his weapon glowing with deadly light. And then, "Hold your fire!" The commander's voice thundered across the barren land. The soldier froze. The commander stepped forward, his shadow falling across her broken body. His eyes blazed with anger, not at her, but at his own men. "She is mine," he said, his tone like steel. The soldiers lowered their weapons, confused, uneasy. Some muttered under their breath, but none dared to disobey. He reached down, not with kindness, but with command. "Get up." She stared at him, her body shaking, her heart torn between fear and fury. For a moment, she thought he might strike, punish her for defiance, but instead he pulled her to her feet and turned to the others. "Any man who harms her will answer to me." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They obeyed, though she saw the hatred in their eyes. Back on the warship, her wound was treated. The commander stood nearby, watching in silence as the medic wrapped her shoulder. She wanted to spit words of hatred at him, to curse him for denying her freedom. Yet the memory of his voice, "Any man who harms her will answer to me," echoed in her mind. When the medic left, she finally spoke. "Why? Why save me? Why stop them?" His answer was quiet, almost too quiet to hear. "Because not all chains are meant to kill." Her brow furrowed. "Then what am I to you? A prize? A slave? A burden you carry because of duty?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You are alive. That is enough." And then he left, leaving her with questions that felt heavier than her chains. The crew grew restless in the days that followed. She felt their stares, heard their whispers. She weakens him. He is not the commander he once was. She will be the death of us all. She tried to ignore their voices, but the truth was clear. Her presence had become dangerous, not only to herself but to him as well. One night she heard footsteps stop outside her chamber. 2 soldiers whispered in low voices, "We should end this. Kill her while he sleeps. If he finds out, he won't. And if he does, better." Her blood than ours, her breath caught. Fear rushed through her veins. But before they could act, the commander's voice cut through the silence. "Leave." The soldiers stiffened. She heard the sound of retreating boots. Then the door opened, and the commander stepped inside. For the first time, his face was not stone. It was tired, human. "They will kill you if they can," he said. She lifted her chin. "Then why not let them? Why protect me?" His eyes held hers, steady and dark. "Because I have already killed too much." Her heart trembled. His words were not those of a conqueror. They were the words of a man haunted by ghosts. That night, she could not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of his face, his voice, his choices. He was her captor, her jailer, the man who had stolen her freedom. And yet, in some twisted way, he had also saved it. She remembered the barren moon, the moment when death had almost taken her. She remembered the fire, in his voice when he shouted, "She is mine." It was not love, it was not mercy, but it was something. And something in this cold and endless war was more dangerous than nothing. In the silence of her chamber, she whispered to herself, "He is my enemy. He is my captor. But he is not like the others, and that is what makes him the most dangerous of all." The warship drifted through the black sea of stars. Days turned into nights, though no sun or moon marked the passage of time. For her, time had become a cage, just like the walls of her chamber. But something was changing. The commander no longer treated her like an object. He spoke, not often, but enough to plant seeds of doubt in her heart. She had seen him fight for her, protect her from his own men, even risk whispers of rebellion among the crew. He was still her captor. Yet he was no longer only that. One evening he brought her food as always. This time he did not turn to leave. He remained, standing near the door, silent. She looked at him, defiant. "Do you watch me to make sure I eat?" "No," he said. "I watch because I forget how to be human. And when I look at you, I remember." The word struck her like a blade, sharp and unexpected. She set the bread down slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "You destroy worlds," she whispered. "And yet you speak of being human?" His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he would leave. Instead, he walked closer and sat across from her. "Yes," he said. "I destroy. I obey. I kill when ordered. But once, before all this, I had a family, a wife, a son. They were lost in the Empire's endless wars. I became what the Empire wanted me to be, because it was the only way to survive the pain." She froze. She had expected excuses, pride, even lies. Not this. Not the image of a man who had lost everything, just as she had. For the first time, she saw not the commander, but the man behind, the armor. The days that followed were different. Their silence turned into cautious words, their words into small conversations. He told her about battles he never wished to fight, about the emptiness of victory when the dead could not return. She told him about her city before it burned, about the music in the streets, the laughter of children, the festivals of light. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but he listened as if every word was a treasure. At night, when she was alone, she wondered why she spoke to him at all. He was her enemy, her jailer. Yet part of her longed for those conversations. Part of her wanted him to listen because no one else in the galaxy would. But danger grew. The crew whispered louder. She makes him weak. He talks to her like an equal. If the Emperor learns of this, we are all dead. Their hatred for her deepened, and with it, their suspicion of him. She saw it in their eyes when they passed her in the halls. They did not just hate her for being their enemy. They hated her for touching something inside their commander that they could not control. One night she asked him directly, "Why risk yourself? Why speak to me as if I matter? If the Emperor finds out—" He interrupted, his voice sharp. "If the Emperor finds out, both of us are dead." Her heart pounded. Then why? His eyes met hers, dark and steady. "Because I have lived too, long with silence in my heart. You break that silence, and for that I will risk everything." The words shook her. She turned away, hiding the storm inside her chest. She told herself it was a trick, a trap, a lie meant to weaken her. Yet when she looked back at him, she saw no deception in his eyes, only pain and something more dangerous, something close to tenderness. That night she dreamed of her home. Not in ruins, but alive with music and firelight. For the first time, since her capture, her dream was not filled with death. When she woke, she realized why, because his voice had followed her even into her sleep. The next morning, tension exploded. A soldier confronted the commander outside her chamber. "She poisons you," the man spat. "She is not one of us. She should be sent to the Emperor, as is tradition. Why keep her here?" The commander's hand moved to his weapon. His voice was ice. "Step back," the soldier sneered. "You would draw your sword for her? For a spoil of war?" Without warning, the commander struck, a single swift blow that dropped the soldier to the floor. He did not kill him, but the message was clear. "Any man who questions my orders again," the commander said coldly, "will not live to regret it." The hallway fell silent. The crew obeyed. But fear and hatred smoldered in their eyes. When he entered her chamber later, she confronted him. "You will die for this. Your own men will turn against you." "Perhaps," he admitted, "but I will not deliver you to the Emperor. That I cannot do." "Why not?" she demanded. He looked at her, and for the first time his voice cracked. "Because I cannot give away the only thing that makes me feel alive." Her breath caught. Silence filled the room, but not the heavy silence of before. This silence was different, charged, dangerous. She turned away, but her heart betrayed her. It beat faster, louder, as if it already knew the truth her mind refused to accept. That night, as the warship cut across the stars, both of them lay awake in separate rooms, each chained, not by iron, but by something stronger. He, by duty. She, by pride. And both, by a dangerous spark that neither could deny. The Empire's orders arrived like thunder. A coded message blinked across the warship's console, carrying the seal of the Emperor himself. All crew gathered in the command chamber as the commander read aloud, "Deliver the captive to the capital. She will stand as proof of victory, a symbol of the Empire's power." Whispers filled the room. Soldiers smirked, their eyes glinting with triumph. At last, the prize they hated guarding would be gone. But the commander said nothing. He stood, silent, the words heavy in his hands. His eyes did not leave the message, though his mind had already left the chamber. That night he entered her room. She sat on the bed, her chains resting in her lap, her face calm though her heart raced. She already knew what the order must have said. "You have received your command," she said quietly, "to deliver me to the Emperor." He did not answer. His silence was more powerful than words. "You will obey, won't you?" she pressed. "You are loyal. You always obey." Finally, his voice came, low and sharp. "Not this time." Her breath caught. "Then what will you do?" His eyes burned with a storm she had never seen before. "If I obey, you will be taken, broken, and displayed as nothing more than a trophy. If I defy, I will be called traitor. Either way, blood will fall." For days he avoided the crew. He spoke little, gave short commands, and shut himself in his private quarters. The soldiers began to whisper louder. "He hesitates. He fears the Emperor. No, he protects her." Their suspicion grew dangerous, but he did not care. In his chamber he sat alone, staring at his weapon on the table. The blade reflected his face back at him, a face of loyalty, duty, obedience, a face that had killed too many. But now, that face trembled with something new. Love. It was unspoken, fragile, dangerous, but it was there, burning against the chains of his duty. One night, she was awakened by the door opening. He stood there, his shoulders heavy, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. "They will force me to decide soon," he said. "And what will you choose?" she asked, her voice quiet, trembling. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across her. "All. My life I chose the Empire. I gave it my sword, my loyalty, my soul, and in return it took everything I loved, my wife, my son, my peace." He paused, his voice breaking. "Now, I have only one choice left to make. If love is treason, then I choose treason." Her heart pounded. She wanted to deny the words, to call them lies. But his face, his voice, his eyes told the truth. He was no longer the Empire's weapon. He was a man breaking his own chains. The next morning, tension reached its peak. The crew gathered again. "Commander," one soldier said boldly, "the Emperor awaits. Why do we delay? Deliver the girl, or we will." The chamber grew still. Dozens of eyes watched him, waiting. Slowly, he stood. His voice was cold as steel. "No one touches her. She does not leave this ship." The soldier's face twisted with rage. "You betray the Empire. You betray us all." The commander's hand moved to his blade. In an instant, the soldier's weapon was on the floor, his throat under the edge of steel. "I betray nothing," the commander growled. "I refuse a lie. This war takes everything and gives nothing, and I will not let it take her." The crew froze, silent, their fear greater than their anger. That night he returned to her chamber. She looked at him, her eyes wide with questions. "What will you do now?" she whispered. He knelt before her, his voice steady but soft. "I will free you, even if it costs me my life." Her throat tightened. "And what then? Where will you go?" "The Empire will hunt you." His lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "Then let them hunt. For once I will run toward life instead of death." Tears filled her eyes, though she tried to hide them. She had sworn to hate him, to never forgive. Yet here he was, breaking everything he had been for her. The next day, secret plans began. Supplies were hidden. Routes through enemy space were calculated. The escape would be dangerous, almost impossible, but it was their only chance. Every step was a risk. Every whisper carried death, yet he moved with determination, no longer the silent soldier of the Empire, but a man who had finally chosen his own path. She watched him, torn between fear and something stronger. She told herself it was foolishness. She told herself it was weakness. But in the quiet of her heart, she knew the truth. She no longer saw him as only her captor. He was something else now. Something she did not yet have the courage to name. As the warship sailed through the endless night, both knew the choice had been made. There was no turning back. The Empire would not forgive. The crew would not forget. But in the silence of their hearts, a spark had ignited, and sometimes a single spark was enough to burn an empire. The warship moved silently through the stars, but silence no longer meant safety. The commander's decision had changed everything. He was no longer loyal to the Empire, and the crew knew it. The whispers grew louder, the looks of hatred sharper. Every step he took, he felt their eyes on his back, waiting for the moment to strike. But his plan was already in motion. He had chosen treason, and treason meant escape. That night he entered her chamber. The chains still hung from her wrists, but he unlocked them, one by one. The sound of the metal falling to the floor was like thunder in the quiet room. She stared at him, her eyes wide. "You free me?" "Yes," he said. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. "But freedom is not safe. Once we run, they will come for us. The Emperor will send every ship, every soldier." She stepped back, rubbing her sore wrists. "Then why do this?" He met her gaze, his eyes burning with the fire of his choice. "Because I would rather die fighting for you than live as a slave to them." Her heart trembled. She had dreamed of freedom since the day her city fell. Now, here it was, offered by the very man who had once claimed her as a spoil of war. The plan was simple. They would take the escape hangar at the lower deck where a small shuttle waited. It was not fast, but it could slip away unnoticed if luck favored them. But luck did not favor them. When the alarms blared, she knew the crew had discovered the truth. Red lights flashed through the corridors. Boots thundered. Voices shouted commands. "No," she whispered. "Yes," he said, drawing his blade. "Then we fight." They ran through the metal halls, the ship shaking with the sound of alarms. Soldiers poured from every corner, blasters firing. The commander fought like a storm. His blade struck with deadly precision, his movements sharp and unyielding. She followed close behind, ducking fire, her chains now a weapon in her hands. Together, they cut through the wave of enemies, step by step toward the hangar. But the crew was many, too many. A soldier lunged at her, weapon raised. She swung her broken chain across his face, knocking him to the ground. Her breath came heavy, her body weak, but she did not stop. Beside her, the commander's voice roared above the chaos. "Do not stop. Keep moving." At last they reached the hangar doors. The shuttle gleamed in the shadows, their last hope. But dozens of soldiers blocked the path, their weapons aimed, their eyes filled with hatred. The commander stood tall, his blade dripping with firelight. "Stand down," he growled. The soldiers did not move. One stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You betray the Empire. You betray us all." The commander's eyes narrowed. "I betray nothing. I choose life." And then the battle began. Blaster. Fire filled the hangar, painting the walls with red light. Explosions shook the ground. He fought at her side, his blade cutting through the storm, protecting her with every strike. She swung her chains, turning them into a weapon of defiance, refusing to fall, but they were outnumbered. For every soldier they struck down, more came. She felt despair creeping in, whispering that this was the end. And then, another sound, the roar of engines. From the shadows above, ships descended, small, fast, bearing no Empire colors. The rebels. Blast tore through the hangar wall as the rebel fighters attacked. The Empire soldiers scattered in panic, their formation broken. The commander grabbed her hand. "Now! Run!" Together, they dashed for the shuttle. Fire and smoke filled the air. The ground shook with every explosion. He shielded her, pushing her inside as blaster bolts ricocheted around them. He jumped in last, slamming the door shut. The shuttle lifted, engines screaming, bursting into the starry night. The warship grew smaller behind them, its alarms fading into silence. Inside the shuttle, she collapsed onto the seat, her chest heaving. She turned to look at him. His armor was scorched, his blade covered in battle's ash, but his eyes burned with life. They had survived. For now, she whispered, her voice trembling. They will hunt us. The Empire will never forgive. He nodded. Let them come. She searched his face, the face of the man who had once been her captor, her enemy, the man who had chosen treason for her. They once called me a spoil of war, she said softly. What am I now? He leaned closer, his voice quiet but steady. You are not a spoil. You are not a captive. You are my heart, and no empire can chain that. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not only from pain. For the first time since her city burned, she felt something she thought she had, lost forever. Hope. The shuttle disappeared into the stars, carrying them into a future unknown. Freedom or death still waited ahead. The Empire's shadow would follow. Battles would come. But for now, they were together. No longer master and captive, no longer soldier and spoil. For now, they were simply two souls broken by war, bound by something stronger than chains, and sometimes that was enough to change the course of the galaxy.